Welcome to our newest episode about the Great Depression. Subscribe our channel and enjoy. The Great Depression, one of the most severe economic downturns in world history, commenced with the catastrophic stock market crash on October 29, 1929. This day, also recognized as Black Tuesday, marked the culmination of a prolonged period of speculation and overconfidence in the United States economy. As investors scrambled to sell their stocks, a panic ensued, and the market plunged into a freefall, losing a staggering amount of its value. The crash signaled the start of a decade-long period of hardship, unemployment, and widespread economic instability that affected millions of people around the globe. The Great Depression had profound and long-lasting consequences on the world economy and society, shaping politics, culture, and international relations for decades to come. In the aftermath of the stock market crash on October 29, 1929, the devastating consequences were quickly felt across the United States and beyond. Within a matter of weeks, the once promising investments that millions of people had made were now virtually worthless, and thousands of investors found themselves suddenly penniless. The impact was immediate and widespread, as families who had previously enjoyed a comfortable standard of living were now struggling to make ends meet. The emotional toll was equally staggering, as people grappled with the loss of their life savings and the uncertainty of their financial future. The crash not only shattered the confidence of individual investors but also had a domino effect on businesses and financial institutions, causing a widespread economic collapse that would take years to recover from. The events of those weeks marked a pivotal moment in the history of the United States and had a profound impact on the world's economy for decades to come. In 1930, the United States passed the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act, a piece of legislation that would have far-reaching consequences for the country and the global economy. The act, which was intended to protect American businesses and farmers from foreign competition, imposed steep tariffs on a vast range of imported goods. However, the unintended consequence was that it triggered a sharp decline in international trade and worsened the already dire economic conditions in the United States. The act was met with widespread opposition from economists, business leaders, and trading partners, who warned of the potential harm it could cause. Despite this, the act was signed into law, and its impact was swift and severe. As international trade ground to a halt, unemployment rates skyrocketed, and businesses struggled to stay afloat. The Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act was a significant contributing factor to the worsening of the Great Depression and demonstrated the importance of international trade in maintaining a healthy global economy. By 1932, the economic devastation wrought by the Great Depression had reached its peak in the United States, with widespread unemployment being one of the most prominent symptoms of the crisis. Nearly 25% of the American workforce was without a job, representing over 12 million people struggling to make ends meet. The impact on families and communities was devastating, as unemployment led to a sharp increase in poverty, homelessness, and hunger. People who had previously held steady jobs were now left scrambling for any work they could find, often resorting to day labor or menial jobs that paid barely enough to survive. The sheer scale of the unemployment crisis was unprecedented in American history, and it highlighted the urgent need for government intervention to address the situation. The high unemployment rate would persist for several more years, and it took massive government programs like the New Deal to start to turn the tide on the economic crisis. In 1933, President Franklin D. Roosevelt signed into law the National Industrial Recovery Act, NIRA, a landmark piece of legislation aimed at restoring economic stability and providing relief to the millions of Americans suffering from the effects of the Great Depression. The act established a system of industry-wide codes that regulated wages, working hours, and working conditions. These codes were designed to promote fair competition and ensure that workers received reasonable wages and benefits. The NIRA also created the National Recovery Administration, NRA, which was tasked with enforcing the codes and working with business leaders to develop strategies for economic recovery. The NIRA represented a significant shift in the role of the federal government in regulating the economy, and it helped to set the stage for further government intervention in the years to come. While the act faced some opposition from business leaders and conservative politicians, it was widely seen as a necessary step in addressing the economic crisis and providing much-needed relief to workers and their families. The recession of 1937 to 1938 marked a brief setback in the United States' long and arduous journey to recovery from the Great Depression. The country had made significant strides towards economic stabilization in the mid-1930s, thanks to government programs like the New Deal, which provided jobs and relief to millions of Americans. However, in 1937, the government began to scale back some of these programs, and the result was a sharp decline in economic activity. The unemployment rate shot up, industrial production dropped, and the economy entered a short-lived recession. Despite the severity of the downturn, the government quickly recognized the need for further intervention and introduced a new round of stimulus measures. By the late 1930s, these efforts began to pay off, and the economy began to show signs of recovery. Industrial production increased, and the unemployment rate began to fall once again. While the recovery was slow and uneven, it marked a turning point in the country's economic fortunes, setting the stage for the post-World War II boom that would propel the United States to unprecedented levels of prosperity. The Great Depression was not just a crisis that affected the United States, it was a global phenomenon that had far-reaching consequences for countries and regions around the world. The economic downturns in the US triggered a series of events that led to recessions in Europe, Latin America, and other parts of the world. The collapse of American banks and businesses meant that US lending to foreign countries dried up, making it difficult for these countries to import goods and services. This, in turn, led to a sharp decline in demand for exports, further exacerbating the economic crisis. Countries that relied heavily on exports, such as Germany, were hit particularly hard, with high levels of unemployment and widespread poverty. The economic crisis also had political consequences, leading to the rise of authoritarian regimes in Europe and elsewhere, as leaders promised to address the crisis and restore order. The global effects of the Great Depression were profound, and it took years of concerted international effort to bring about a return to economic stability and growth. The United States' entry into World War II in 1941 marked a turning point in the country's economic fortunes. The massive military spending associated with the war had a profound impact on the American economy, helping to bring an end to the long and painful years of the Great Depression. The war effort created millions of jobs, both directly in the armed forces and indirectly in the manufacturing and service sectors that supported the war. The government also invested heavily in infrastructure projects like the construction of new military bases, which provided further employment opportunities. As a result, the unemployment rate dropped dramatically, from over 14% in 1940 to less than 2% by 1944. The war also had a profound impact on American industry, with manufacturing output increasing by more than 50% between 1940 and 1944. The demand for weapons, vehicles, and other military supplies created a boom in manufacturing, with factories operating around the clock to meet the needs of the armed forces. This growth in industrial output had a ripple effect throughout the economy, as increased production meant more jobs and higher wages, which in turn stimulated consumer spending. The war also provided an important stimulus to technological innovation, as scientists and engineers worked to develop new weapons and technologies to aid the war effort. This investment in research and development helped to lay the groundwork for the post-war technological boom that would drive much of the country's economic growth in the decades to come. In addition to the direct economic benefits of the war effort, the country's participation in World War II also had important geopolitical implications. The US emerged from the war as a global superpower, with a dominant position in international affairs that would shape the world for decades to come. Overall, the United States' entry into World War II had a transformative effect on the country's economy, bringing an end to the Great Depression and laying the foundation for decades of economic growth and prosperity. The massive government spending associated with the war effort created millions of jobs, stimulated innovation and technological development, and set the stage for a new era of economic expansion and prosperity. Thank you for watching, subscribe our channel and see you in next episodes.